I'm 89 years old, and I've never had a boyfriend. People hear that and they assume things. They assume I was unwanted, that no one ever chose me, that I must have been invisible. But the truth is, it wasn't like that. People think no one ever loved me, but the truth is, I didn't let them. That's a harder thing to admit, because it means I wasn't just someone life forgot. I was someone who quietly stepped back from it, and at the time, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like control. It felt like safety. It felt like I was protecting something important. Now, at 89, I'm not so sure what that something was. I sit in the same small room every morning. There's a chair by the window. It's not special, just old, like me. The sunlight comes in the same way it always has. Nothing about the outside world suggests I live differently from anyone else. But inside, there's a kind of silence that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from something that never started. That's a different kind of quiet. It's not the echo of memories. It's the absence of them. I wasn't always like this. Or maybe I was, and I just didn't realize it. When I was young, people used to say I was sensible. That was the word they used. Not beautiful, not charming, not even shy. Sensible. It sounded like a compliment. It meant I didn't cause trouble, that I made good decisions, that I didn't get carried away. And in those days, that was considered a good thing. I grew up in a house where emotions weren't spoken out loud. They were understood or ignored. My mother didn't hug. My father didn't explain. They provided, they expected, and we followed. Love wasn't something you felt openly. It was something you proved through responsibility, through obedience, through not making mistakes. So I learned early that wanting too much was dangerous, that letting someone get close enough to matter meant giving them the ability to change you. And I didn't want to be changed. I wanted to stay steady, predictable, safe. In my 20s, there were opportunities. I can say that now honestly. There were men who noticed me, men who spoke kindly, who lingered a little longer than necessary, who found reasons to start conversations. I remember one of them clearly. His name was Daniel. He worked in the same office. Nothing special about him at first glance, but he had a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. That was new to me. One afternoon he walked me home. We didn't say much, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. That's rare when you're young. Silence usually feels like something you need to fix, but with him, it wasn't. At my door, he paused, like he wanted to say something more, and I knew, in that moment, if I stayed, if I waited, something would begin, something real, something that would change the direction of my life. And I stepped inside before he could speak. I told myself it was nothing, just a walk, just a colleague being polite. But I knew exactly what I was doing. And I did it again and again. Different faces, different moments, same decision. I kept choosing distance, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt too much. And I didn't trust what would happen if I let it grow. I watched other women fall in love, get married, build lives around shared routines. I told myself I was different, that I didn't need those things, that I was stronger for standing alone. And for a long time, that felt true. I had a job, I had structure, I had control over my time, my space, my decisions. No one disappointed me, no one left, no one changed. because no one was ever close enough to do any of those things. It was a quiet kind of success, or at least that's what I believed. In my 30s, the questions started. Not harsh, just curious. Have you met anyone? Don't you want a family? I would smile, give simple answers. I'm busy, I'm happy as I am, and most people accepted that, because I said it with enough certainty that it sounded true, and maybe, at the time, it was. But certainty can be a fragile thing. It holds until something challenges it. For me, that didn't happen all at once. It came in small moments. Watching a couple sit together without speaking, but still connected. Hearing someone say we instead of I. Seeing the way people leaned into each other without thinking about it. Those things stayed with me longer than I admitted, but I still didn't move. I stayed where I was, safe, unchanged. In my 40s, life became quieter. The opportunities became fewer, not gone, just different, more cautious, more measured. People assume that by then you've chosen your path, and I had, even if I didn't say it out loud. I began to notice something else. The world doesn't stop for your decisions. It adjusts around them. People stopped asking, stopped wondering. They placed me in a category. She's on her own. And that became my identity. Not in a loud way, just quietly, like a label no one needed to say. I carried on. Years passed the way they do. Work, home, routine, days blending into each other without much resistance. And then, one day, I realized something. There were no shared memories, no stories that involved someone else standing beside me, no moments where I could say, we went there, we felt that. It was always I, just me. And at first, that didn't feel like a problem. It felt like consistency, like I had lived exactly the way I intended. But intention doesn't always protect you from realization. That came later, much later. In my 60s, the world slowed down, not dramatically, just enough to notice things you had ignored before. Evenings felt longer, rooms felt bigger, silence felt different. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It had weight. I started remembering things I had pushed aside. Moments at doors I closed too quickly. Conversations I ended before they could deepen. People I kept at a distance, even when they tried to stay. I wondered what would have happened if I had stayed just a little longer, listened a little more, allowed something to begin instead of ending it before it had a name. But by then, those moments were gone. Not lost in a dramatic way, just unreachable. In my 70s, the loneliness became clearer, not overwhelming, just consistent, like a background sound you can't turn off. Friends had their families, their routines, their shared lives. I visited sometimes, sat at tables where conversations flowed between people who had history together, and I realized I didn't have that kind of history, not with anyone. I was present, but I wasn't part of something. That's a subtle difference, but you feel it deeply. Now, at 89, I don't regret my entire life. That wouldn't be honest. I made choices that felt right at the time. I stayed true to what I believed I needed. But I do see something now that I couldn't see then. Avoiding pain also means avoiding connection. And connection is where most of life actually happens, not in big events, not in achievements, but in the small, shared moments you don't think twice about when you're living them. I don't have those, not the kind that come from letting someone truly in. And that's not because no one ever tried. It's because I didn't let them. If you're listening to me, I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. That's not what this is. I'm just telling you what it looks like when a life stays untouched in certain ways. It looks calm. It looks controlled. It even looks peaceful from the outside. But inside, there are spaces that never got filled. Not with noise, not with chaos, just with presence, with another person choosing to stay. I used to think strength meant not needing anyone. Now I think maybe it also means allowing someone to matter, even if it changes you, even if it doesn't last forever, because at least then you have something real to remember, something that happened, something that lived while you were living. I'm 89 years old, and I've never had a boyfriend, not because no one loved me, but because I didn't let them. And now I understand what that truly means. It means there are parts of life you can't go back and experience later, no matter how much time you have left. And time isn't something I have much of anymore. So I sit here by the window, watching the light move across the floor. And I think about all the moments that almost happened, all the lives that almost touched mine. And I wonder what it would have felt like to stay just once, long enough for something to begin.